morning shift at the Grandview Hotel started like any other Tuesday, with the marble floors gleaming under crystal chandeliers and the scent of fresh orchids perfuming the lobby. 23-year-old Claire Morrison arrived 15 minutes early, as she always did, her worn sneakers squeaking softly against the polished floor as she headed toward the staff entrance. She smoothed down her cleaning uniform, the fabric slightly faded from countless washes, and tied her dark hair into a neat ponytail before clocking in. Claire had worked at the Grandview for nearly 2 years, taking the job after her mother's medical bills had forced her to drop out of college. The pay wasn't much, but it was honest work, and she took pride in every room she cleaned, every surface she polished. Her supervisor, Mrs. Patricia Donovan, often praised her attention to detail, though the compliments never came with a raise. What Claire didn't know was that this Tuesday would change everything. Across town, in a penthouse suite overlooking the city, Marcus Whitfield stood before his floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the sunrise paint the skyline in shades of amber and rose. At 42, he was the sole owner of Whitfield Enterprises, a hospitality empire that included 37 luxury hotels across North America. The Grandview was his crown jewel, the first property he'd inherited from his father, and expanded into the 5-star establishment it was today. Marcus had built his fortune on one principle. People revealed their true character when they thought no one important was watching. His father had taught him that lesson when Marcus was just 16, making him work anonymously in their hotel's kitchens and laundry rooms during summer breaks. Now, facing troubling reports about staff behavior at the Grandview, Marcus decided to employ the same strategy. He pulled out a bag of clothes he'd purchased from a thrift store, torn jeans, a stained jacket, scuffed boots, and a wool hat. In his bathroom, he rubbed dirt on his face and hands, mussed his usually neat hair, and transformed himself into someone invisible, someone society overlooked. By 8:30, Marcus stood outside the Grandview's service entrance, looking every bit the homeless man he pretended to be. He'd been watching the staff rotation for weeks through security footage, timing his arrival for maximum exposure to different employees. The first to encounter him was Brian Fletcher, the assistant manager who'd been with the hotel for 5 years. Marcus had approved his last promotion himself. "Hey, you can't be here," Brian said sharply, not even slowing his stride as he entered the building. "This is private property. Move along before I call security." Marcus shuffled closer. "Please, sir, I'm just cold. Could I wait inside for a few minutes? There's a warming shelter that opens at 10. "Not my problem," Brian cut him off, his tone cold. "You've got 5 seconds to leave or I'm making that call." Marcus watched him disappear inside, making a mental note. Next came Jennifer Wu, one of the front desk managers he'd personally recruited from a competitor. She stopped when she saw him, but only to wrinkle her nose in disgust. "God, the city needs to do something about this," she muttered to her colleague, loud enough for Marcus to hear. "It's bad for business having people like him around." One by one, Marcus approached different staff members. The head concierge pretended not to hear him. 2 servers leaving their shift crossed the street to avoid him. A security guard threatened to arrest him for loitering. Each interaction was noted, catalogued in Marcus's sharp memory. By noon, he was genuinely cold and genuinely hungry, the autumn wind cutting through his thin jacket. He hadn't expected the experience to affect him so deeply, but the casual cruelty, the way people looked through him as if he didn't exist, it stirred something uncomfortable in his chest. That's when he saw her. Claire emerged from the service entrance carrying 2 bags of trash to the dumpster. She was humming softly, some melody Marcus didn't recognize. When she spotted him sitting against the wall, she didn't flinch, didn't look away. "Are you all right?" she asked, setting down the bags and approaching him with genuine concern in her eyes. Marcus looked up, maintaining his character. "Just trying to stay warm, miss." "Have you eaten today?" Claire asked. And before he could answer, she was already reaching into her pocket. She pulled out a crumpled $10 bill and a granola bar. "Here, there's a deli 2 blocks down. They make good sandwiches, and the owner is kind. Tell him Claire sent you." "I can't take your money," Marcus protested, the word surprisingly difficult to say. "Please," Claire insisted, pressing the items into his dirty hands. I know what it's like to be hungry. My mom and I went through some really hard times after my dad left. If someone hadn't helped us then, I don't know where we'd be. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Thank you. What's your name? Claire Morrison. I work here as a cleaner. She smiled warmly. What's yours? Mark, he said, using a shortened version of his name. Mark Williams. Well, Mark, I have to get back to work, but... She hesitated, then reached into her other pocket and pulled out a business card for a local shelter. This place has good people. They helped my mom when she needed it. Tell them you're a friend of the Morrison family. Before Marcus could respond, a sharp voice cut through the air. Morrison! What the hell are you doing? Mrs. Donovan stood in the doorway, her face red with anger. Get away from him right now. I was just... Claire started. I can see what you were doing. Fraternizing during work hours and with a vagrant no less. Mrs. Donovan's voice dripped with contempt. That's coming out of your paycheck, and you're getting a written warning. Now get back to work before I make it a suspension. Claire's face fell, but she squeezed Marcus's shoulder gently before hurrying back inside. He watched her go, something shifting fundamentally in his understanding of his own company. Mrs. Donovan turned her glare on him. And you? Get lost before I have you arrested for trespassing and harassment. These employees have work to do, and you're nothing but a distraction. Marcus stood slowly, committing every word to memory. Yes, ma'am. I'm leaving. As he walked away, he pulled out the $10 Claire had given him and the business card she'd offered. A cleaner, earning barely above minimum wage, had just given him what was likely a significant portion of her daily food budget. She'd done it without hesitation, without judgment, with nothing but kindness. Meanwhile, executives making six figures had treated him like trash. Literally. Marcus found a coffee shop, cleaned up in the bathroom, and ordered a meal using Claire's $10. As he sat there, he made a series of phone calls that would set certain wheels in motion. By tomorrow morning, the Grandview Hotel would experience a shakeup that no one saw coming. But first, he needed to learn more about Claire Morrison. He needed to understand who she really was, what had brought her to this point, and why she still had compassion when the world had clearly been unkind to her. He also needed to know why his own management had thought it acceptable to punish an employee for basic human decency. The answers to these questions would come soon enough, but they would bring revelations that Marcus himself wasn't prepared for. Truths about his company, his employees, and ultimately, about the kind of man he wanted to be. As the afternoon sun began to dip toward the horizon, Marcus Whitfield sat in that coffee shop, still dressed in his homeless disguise, and realized that this experiment had already taught him far more than he'd anticipated. The real test, however, was only beginning. Claire's hands trembled slightly as she pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway of the 7th floor. The written warning from Mrs. Donovan sat heavy in her mind, not because of the reprimand itself, but because of what it meant for her precarious financial situation. 3 warnings led to termination, and she already had one from last month when she'd been late due to her mother's doctor appointment. She couldn't afford to lose this job. Not with her mother's medication costing nearly $400 a month, not with rent due in 2 weeks, and certainly not with the electricity bill that had arrived yesterday with a threatening red notice. Still, as she methodically cleaned room 704, Claire couldn't bring herself to regret helping Mark. She'd seen the genuine hunger in his eyes, the bone-deep cold that made his shoulders shake. How could she have walked past that? Her mother, despite their struggles, had raised her to believe that kindness wasn't something you offered only when it was convenient. Always help when you can, baby, her mother Diane would say, because someday you might be the one who needs it. What Claire didn't know was that Marcus Whitfield had spent the entire afternoon conducting his own investigation, not into her, but into the systematic failures within his own organization. After cleaning up and changing back into his regular clothes, Marcus had returned to his office and pulled up Claire's employment file. What he found made his jaw clench. Claire Morrison, hired 22 months ago, perfect attendance except for 3 instances, all documented with doctor's notes for her mother's appointments. Performance reviews, exemplary across the board. Pay raises, none. Applications for advancement, 4, all denied without proper explanation. He then pulled the files of the employees who'd dismissed him so callously. Brian Fletcher, the assistant manager who'd threatened to call security, had 3 formal complaints filed against him for staff mistreatment, all buried and never addressed. Jennifer Wu had been documented making derogatory comments about guests she deemed beneath the hotel's standards. The pattern was clear and damning. But what truly caught Marcus's attention was a memo from 6 months ago. Claire had applied for a front desk position, a role that would have nearly doubled her salary. Mrs. Donovan had rejected the application with a single line. Cleaning staff should remain in their lane. Miss Morrison lacks the refinement for guest-facing positions. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest. He picked up his phone and called his head of human resources, Robert Chen. "Robert, I need complete employment records for Patricia Donovan, supervisor of housekeeping at the Grandview. Everything. Performance reviews, disciplinary actions, staff turnover rates under her management. I want it on my desk in 2 hours." "Of course, Mr. Whitfield. May I ask what this is regarding?" "Let's call it a quality assessment," Marcus said tersely. "And Robert? I also want a full background check on Claire Morrison. Not for disciplinary reasons. I'm considering her for a position change." After ending the call, Marcus leaned back in his chair and thought about the young woman who'd given away her lunch money without a second thought. There was something extraordinary about maintaining that level of compassion while living on the edge of poverty. It spoke to character, the kind of character he desperately needed in his leadership team. The next morning, Claire arrived at work to find an unusual buzz in the staff area. People were whispering in clusters, shooting nervous glances at each other. "What's going on?" she asked her friend and fellow cleaner, Jasmine Rodriguez. "Girl, you haven't heard?" Jasmine's eyes were wide. "Mr. Whitfield himself is coming to the hotel today. Like, the actual owner. Nobody's seen him visit in person in over 3 years." Claire's stomach dropped. Owner visits meant scrutiny, and scrutiny meant people looking for problems. With her recent warning, she couldn't afford any attention. "When?" she asked. "Any minute now. Mrs. Donovan is losing her mind, making everyone double-check everything." As if summoned by the mention of her name, Mrs. Donovan burst into the staff room, her face flushed with stress. "Everyone, listen up. Mr. Whitfield will be conducting a surprise inspection. I expect perfection. Do you understand? Morrison, you're on the presidential suite today. If there's a single speck of dust, you're finished." Claire nodded, grabbing her cart and heading to the elevator. The presidential suite was on the 20th floor, a sprawling space of luxury that she'd only cleaned twice before. It was usually reserved for VIP guests and required meticulous attention to detail. She didn't know that Marcus Whitfield had specifically requested she be assigned there. As Claire worked her way through the suite, she noticed something odd. Despite being listed as occupied, there were no personal belongings, no signs of actual habitation. The bed was perfectly made, untouched. She shrugged it off. Wealthy people were sometimes unpredictable. She was dusting the ornate bookshelf when she heard the door open behind her. "Don't mind me," a familiar voice said. "Continue with your work." Claire turned and froze. Standing in the doorway was a man in an impeccably tailored suit, his dark hair styled, his face clean-shaven. But those eyes, she knew those eyes. "Mark?" she whispered, confusion flooding her features. Marcus closed the door behind him and moved further into the room. "My full name is Marcus Whitfield. I own this hotel, Claire, and I owe you an explanation." The dust cloth fell from her hands. You're the owner? But yesterday you were pretending to be homeless." "Yes." Marcus watched her carefully, gauging her reaction. "I've been receiving reports about staff behavior, about how employees treat people they perceive as beneath them. I wanted to see it for myself." Claire's mind raced, trying to process this information. So it was all a test? The cold? The hunger? It was fake? The disguise was fake, but the cold and hunger were real enough. And so was your kindness. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out the $10 bill she'd given him, now pressed flat and preserved in a clear envelope. "Do you know how many employees I encountered yesterday?" 17. "Do you know how many offered to help?" 1. "You." Claire felt her cheeks burn. "I just did what anyone should do, but they didn't. That's precisely the point." Marcus gestured to the sitting area. "Please, sit. We need to talk." "Mr. Whitfield, I can't. I'm working, and Mrs. Donovan is currently in a meeting with HR. Marcus interrupted gently. "And you're not in trouble, Claire. Quite the opposite." Hesitantly, Claire sat on the edge of an elegant armchair, her work uniform a stark contrast to the luxury surrounding her. Marcus took the seat across from her. "I've reviewed your employment file," he began. 22 months of exemplary service, 4 applications for advancement, all rejected. Can you tell me why you think that is?" Claire bit her lip. "Mrs. Donovan says I'm not refined enough for positions that interact with guests. She says cleaning is where I belong." "And do you believe that?" "No," Claire said quietly. Then with more strength, "No, I don't. I put myself through 2 years of college studying hospitality management before I had to drop out. I know I could do more, be more. But I needed this job, and I couldn't risk rocking the boat." Marcus nodded slowly. "What if I told you that Mrs. Donovan's assessment has nothing to do with your capabilities and everything to do with her own insecurities? What if I told you that her turnover rate is 3 times higher than any other department supervisor, and that she's systematically blocked talented employees from advancing?" Claire's eyes widened. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll consider a new position," Marcus said. "I'm restructuring the management at the Grandview. I need people who understand that true luxury isn't about marble floors and crystal chandeliers. It's about how we treat every person who walks through our doors, regardless of their station in life." "What kind of position?" Claire asked, her heart pounding. Marcus smiled. "Let's start with assistant to the general manager. It comes with a salary of $60,000 a year, full benefits, and tuition reimbursement if you want to finish your degree." Claire's breath caught. 60,000? That was more than triple what she made now. It was enough to pay for her mother's medication without choosing between pills and groceries. It was enough to finally fix the leak in their apartment ceiling. It was enough to breathe. But something in her instinctively pulled back. "Mr. Whitfield, I appreciate this more than you know, but I can't accept a position just because I was kind to you one time. That wouldn't be fair to everyone else who works here." And it was in that moment, watching her refuse an opportunity that could change her life because of her sense of fairness, that Marcus Whitfield realized he'd found something far more valuable than a good employee. He'd found someone who might actually understand the vision he had for his company's future. "Claire," he said softly, "what if I told you this isn't just about one act of kindness? What if it's about showing me exactly the kind of leadership this company needs?" Outside the presidential suite, the hotel continued its daily rhythm, unaware that the lives of many staff members were about to change dramatically. Mrs. Donovan sat in an HR office, her carefully constructed world beginning to crumble as years of misconduct were laid out before her. And in that luxurious room, Claire Morrison stood at a crossroads, facing a choice that would alter the trajectory of her entire life. Claire's mind swirled with possibilities and doubts as she sat across from Marcus Whitfield. The offer seemed too good to be true, and her life had taught her that things that seemed too good to be true usually were. "I need time to think about this," she said finally, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Marcus respected that. "Of course. Take 24 hours. But Claire, I want you to understand something. This isn't charity. I'm a businessman, and I don't make decisions based on sentiment. I'm offering you this position because I believe you have exactly what this company needs." Before Claire could respond, Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression hardened. "I need to take care of something. We'll talk tomorrow. 9 a.m. My office at corporate headquarters." He handed her a business card with the address. After he left, Claire finished cleaning the suite in a daze, her mind churning. That evening, she took 2 buses to reach the small apartment she shared with her mother in a neighborhood far from the Grandview's marble and gold. Diane Morrison was sitting in her worn recliner, oxygen tubes in her nose, when Claire walked in. At 53, she looked older, the years of hard work and illness having taken their toll, but her eyes still sparkled with intelligence and warmth. "You're late, sweetheart," Diane said. "Everything okay?" Claire dropped onto the couch and told her mother everything: the homeless man, the warning from Mrs. Donovan, and the stunning revelation about Marcus Whitfield's true identity and his job offer. Diane listened quietly, and when Claire finished, she was silent for a long moment. "What's holding you back?" she asked finally. "What if I fail? What if he's wrong about me? I'd be going from cleaning rooms to managing people, Mom. I dropped out of college. I don't have a degree. You have something better than a degree, Diane said firmly. You have character, Claire. You have compassion and intelligence and a work ethic that would put most people to shame. Don't let fear convince you you're less than you are. That night, Claire barely slept. She kept thinking about Marcus's words, about the life this opportunity could provide for her and her mother. But she also thought about Jasmine and the other cleaners who worked just as hard as she did. What made her more deserving? The next morning, Claire dressed in her only professional outfit, a navy blue dress she'd worn to her college interviews 3 years ago, and made her way to Whitfield Enterprises headquarters. The building was a gleaming tower of glass and steel in the financial district, so different from her usual world. Security directed her to the 42nd floor, where Marcus's executive assistant, a polished woman named Victoria Hall, greeted her warmly. Miss Morrison, Mr. Whitfield is expecting you. Please go right in. Marcus's office was stunning, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. But what caught Claire's attention was the wall of photographs showing various Whitfield hotels and their staff, candid shots of employees laughing, working, interacting with guests. I took most of those myself, Marcus said, rising from his desk. During my anonymous visits over the years, every person in those photos is someone who embodies what I want this company to represent. Claire studied the images more closely. She recognized some faces from the grand view, saw moments of genuine human connection captured in time. I've made my decision, she said, turning to face him. I'll accept the position, but on one condition. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You're negotiating? I like that. What's your condition? I want to help reform the housekeeping department. Not just at the Grandview, but across all Whitfield properties. The cleaners, the invisible people, they work harder than anyone and get recognized least. If I'm going to take this opportunity, I want to make sure it creates opportunities for others too. For a moment, Marcus just stared at her. Then he laughed, a genuine sound of delight. Claire Morrison, I made the right choice. Yes, absolutely yes. In fact, I was going to propose something similar. But first, there's someone else I need you to meet. He pressed a button on his phone. Victoria, please send them in. The door opened and 3 people entered. Claire recognized them immediately. Jasmine Rodriguez, Tom Patterson, an older cleaner who'd been with the hotel for 15 years, and Kevin Wright, a young man from maintenance who always had a kind word for everyone. What's going on? Claire asked, confused. Marcus smiled. You weren't the only one who helped Mark Williams yesterday. After you went back inside, I continued my observation. Jasmine saw me later and brought me a cup of coffee from the staff room. Tom offered me his jacket when he saw me shivering. Kevin invited me to join him for lunch, even though it meant sharing his meal. Claire looked at her friends, seeing their bewildered expressions mirror her own. I'm restructuring the Grandview's entire management, Marcus continued. Mrs. Donovan was terminated this morning, along with 3 other supervisors who've created toxic work environments. Brian Fletcher, Jennifer Wu, and several others have been demoted or let go. But I can't build a new culture without the right people in leadership. He turned to address all 4 of them. I'm offering each of you positions in the new structure. Claire will be assistant to the general manager. Jasmine, I want you to head the new guest experience program. Tom, you'll oversee facilities management with a focus on staff training and development. Kevin, you'll be our new director of maintenance services. The room fell silent. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. Tom sank into a chair, overwhelmed. Kevin just stood there, mouth open in shock. Why us? Tom finally asked, his voice rough with emotion. We're just cleaners, maintenance guys. We're nobody special. That's exactly the attitude I'm trying to change, Marcus said firmly. You're not just anything. You're the backbone of this company. You're the people who actually make our hotels run. And you're the ones who proved that you treat everyone with dignity and respect, regardless of what you might gain from it. Claire felt tears prick her eyes. Mr. Whitfield. Marcus. He interrupted. If we're going to work together, it's Marcus. Marcus, she corrected. This is incredible. But people are going to talk. They're going to say we don't deserve this, that we only got promoted because of your test. Let them talk, Marcus said. Results will speak louder than gossip. But I won't lie to you. This will be hard. You'll be learning on the job, facing challenges you've never encountered. There will be people who resent you, who want to see you fail. Are you willing to take that risk? Claire looked at her friends, saw her own hopes and fears reflected in their faces. Then she thought about her mother, about all the nights they'd struggled, all the times they'd been overlooked and underestimated. Yes, she said firmly. We're willing. Over the next week, the Grandview Hotel underwent a transformation. The changes rippled through every department, and not everyone was happy about them. Some longtime employees quit in protest, unable to accept former cleaners as their supervisors. Others embraced the new direction enthusiastically. Claire threw herself into her new role with determination and humility. She spent her first days shadowing the outgoing general manager, taking notes, asking questions, learning everything she could. Marcus had arranged for all 4 of them to attend an intensive management training program, but until then, they were learning by doing. One afternoon, Claire was reviewing guest feedback when she noticed a pattern. Several complaints about dismissive treatment from staff members who remained from the old regime. She brought it to Marcus's attention during their daily check-in. I think we need to do more than just change management, she said. We need to change the entire culture. What if we implemented a program where every employee, regardless of position, spends time in different departments? Let the front desk staff clean rooms for a day. Let the managers work in housekeeping. Create empathy through experience. Marcus considered this. That's brilliant. Draft a proposal and present it at next week's management meeting. As Claire left his office, she nearly collided with a well-dressed woman in the hallway. The woman was in her late 30s, impeccably styled, and she looked at Claire with barely concealed curiosity. You must be Claire Morrison, the woman said. I'm Amanda Preston, VP of Operations. I've heard quite a bit about you. There was something in her tone that made Claire wary. Nice to meet you. I hope you understand what you're getting into, Amanda said smoothly. Marcus has a tendency to make impulsive decisions based on idealism rather than practicality. This company operates on results, not feel-good stories about Cinderella promotions. Claire felt her spine straighten. Then I'll make sure to deliver results. Amanda smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. We'll see. The board meeting is in 3 weeks. That's when you'll present the outcomes of these little experiments. I hope you're ready. As Amanda walked away, Claire felt a chill run down her spine. She was beginning to understand that the real challenge wasn't learning her new job. It was navigating the corporate politics and proving herself to people who'd already decided she would fail. But Claire Morrison hadn't survived everything she'd been through by giving up when things got difficult. She pulled out her phone and texted Jasmine. We need to talk, all 4 of us, tonight. Because if they were going to succeed, they needed to do it together. The real test was just beginning, and Claire was determined to pass it, not just for herself, but for everyone who'd ever been told they weren't good enough, refined enough, or worthy enough to sit at the table. The 3 weeks leading up to the board meeting were the most intense of Claire's life. She, Jasmine, Tom, and Kevin met every evening after work, comparing notes, sharing struggles, and developing strategies. They became a team bound not just by their shared history, but by their determination to prove everyone wrong. Claire's cross-departmental empathy program launched in the 2nd week. She'd expected resistance, but she hadn't anticipated the depth of hostility from some quarters. Several senior staff members openly mocked the initiative, calling it playing dress-up, and predicting it would fail within a month. But something remarkable began to happen. A front desk manager named Andrew Costa spent a day working with the housekeeping team and wrote a lengthy email about the physical demands and attention to detail required. He apologized publicly for comments he'd made in the past about cleaners being unskilled labor. A head chef who spent time in maintenance gained new appreciation for the constant repairs and adjustments needed to keep a hotel running smoothly. The guest satisfaction scores began to tick upward. Comments mentioned friendlier staff, more attentive service, a general atmosphere of warmth that hadn't existed before. But Amanda Preston wasn't impressed. She cornered Marcus in his office 1 week before the board meeting. You're setting yourself up for embarrassment, she told him bluntly. The board is going to see through this publicity stunt. You promoted 4 people with no management experience to senior positions based on a single act of kindness. That's not business strategy. That's emotional decision-making. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Is that your professional assessment or your personal opinion? Both, Amanda said. I've been with this company for 12 years, Marcus. I've worked my way up through legitimate channels, earning every promotion through proven results. These people are getting handed opportunities they haven't earned. Haven't earned? Marcus's voice was quiet but sharp. Claire Morrison has worked harder in 3 weeks than some executives do in 3 months. Tom Patterson has implemented safety protocols that have already prevented 2 potential accidents. Jasmine's guest experience initiatives have generated more positive feedback than we've seen in 2 years, and Kevin has reduced maintenance response times by 40%. Amanda's jaw tightened. Numbers can be manipulated. So can perceptions, Marcus countered. The board meeting will reveal the truth. I suggest you prepare your own report. After Amanda left, Marcus sat alone in his office, wrestling with doubt for the first time. What if he had been too impulsive? What if his desire to prove a point about human decency had clouded his business judgment? His phone rang. It was Claire. Marcus, I need to show you something. Can you come to the Grandview? 30 minutes later, Marcus walked into the hotel's conference room to find not just Claire, but a group of 20 employees, a mix of cleaners, front desk staff, kitchen workers, and managers. What's this about? He asked. Claire stood at the front of the room, a laptop connected to a projector. We've been gathering data, conducting surveys, and documenting everything that's changed over the past 3 weeks. But we realize numbers alone won't convince the board, so we asked employees to share their stories. For the next hour, Marcus listened. A housekeeper named Rita described how the empathy program had led to maintenance fixing a chronic problem with her cleaning equipment, something she'd reported for months that had been ignored. A bellhop talked about how Tom's mentorship had given him the confidence to suggest improvements to the luggage handling system. A front desk employee explained how Jasmine's guest experience training had helped her de-escalate a situation that could have resulted in a scathing review, but it was the final presentation that hit Marcus hardest. A young man named Derek Phillip stood up, his hands shaking slightly. I started here 6 months ago as a dishwasher. I have a criminal record, non-violent offense from when I was 19 and stupid. Most places wouldn't hire me. Mrs. Donovan made sure I knew every day that I was lucky to have any job at all, that I should keep my head down and be grateful. Derek's voice grew stronger. When the new management took over, I figured nothing would change for people like me. But Kevin noticed I was good with fixing things. He got me enrolled in a technical certification program. Tom advocated for me to transfer to maintenance. For the first time in my life, someone saw potential instead of just a record. Derek looked directly at Marcus. You didn't just change 4 lives when you promoted them. You changed dozens, maybe hundreds. Because they remember what it's like to be overlooked, and they're making sure other people don't feel that way. The room fell silent. Claire saw Marcus blink rapidly, his composed exterior cracking slightly. Thank you, Marcus said quietly. All of you. This is exactly what I'd hoped to build. The night before the board meeting, Claire couldn't sleep. She sat at her mother's bedside, watching Diane rest peacefully. The new health insurance from Claire's position had allowed them to switch to better medications. Her mother was breathing easier than she had in years. You awake, baby? Diane's voice was soft in the darkness. Can't sleep, Claire admitted. Nervous about tomorrow? Terrified. Diane reached for her daughter's hand. You know what I've learned in 53 years? The people who deserve seats at the table are often the last ones invited to sit down. But once they're there, they change everything. Not because they're trying to prove something, but because they remember what it was like to stand outside looking in. The board meeting started at 9 a.m. sharp. The Whitfield Enterprises boardroom was intimidating. A massive table surrounded by leather chairs, walls lined with portraits of the company's history. 12 board members sat in judgment, their expressions ranging from curious to openly skeptical. Amanda Preston presented first. Her report meticulously prepared, filled with data about traditional promotion pathways and concerns about setting precedents that could expose the company to liability. Then it was Marcus's turn, but he surprised everyone by stepping aside. I'm going to let my team present, he said. Claire Morrison, The floor is yours. Claire stood, her heart pounding, and looked at the faces around the table. She thought about her mother, about Jasmine and Tom and Kevin, about Derek and Rita, and all the others whose lives had been touched by this change. 3 weeks ago, I was a cleaner making $11 an hour, she began. Today, I'm standing before you as assistant to the general manager. Some of you are wondering if I deserve to be here. That's fair. So let me show you what we've accomplished. For 45 minutes, Claire presented data, employee testimonials, guest feedback scores, and financial projections. She spoke about the empathy program, the reduction in staff turnover, the increase in employee engagement scores. She addressed concerns about precedent and liability, presenting a structured pathway for advancement based on demonstrated competency and character. But she ended with something more personal. This company is called Whitfield Enterprises, but it's built on the backs of people whose names you'll never know. The cleaners who arrive before dawn, the maintenance workers who fix problems in the middle of the night, the kitchen staff who prepare thousands of meals. These aren't just employees, they're the foundation. And when you invest in your foundation, everything built on top of it becomes stronger. The room was silent when she finished. Then one board member, an older woman named Dorothy Brennan, who'd been with the company since Marcus's father ran it, began to clap. Others joined in. Dorothy stood. I've sat through hundreds of presentations in this room. Most of them are polished and professional, but ultimately forgettable. Miss Morrison, what you've presented today is the most compelling case for human-centered business practices I've seen in my 30 years on this board. The vote was unanimous. The restructuring was approved. The empathy program would be expanded to all Whitfield properties. As the board members filed out, several stopped to shake Claire's hand, to congratulate her. Amanda Preston left without a word, her face carefully neutral. Marcus found Claire in the hallway afterward, leaning against the wall, breathing deeply. You did it, he said simply. We did it, she corrected. All of us. Claire, there's something I need to tell you. Marcus hesitated, choosing his words carefully. When I started this experiment, it was about testing my staff, but somewhere along the way, it became about testing myself. About whether I'd built the kind of company my father would be proud of, or just a profitable machine. And, Claire asked softly, you helped me find the answer, not just through your kindness to a stranger, but through everything you've done since. You've reminded me why I got into this business in the first place. 6 months later, the Grandview Hotel had become a case study in hospitality management programs across the country. Employee satisfaction scores were the highest in the company's history. Guest reviews consistently mentioned the genuine warmth of the staff. Claire stood in her new office. She'd been promoted again to Director of Employee Development for all Whitfield properties, looking at a framed photograph on her desk. It was from the day of the board meeting, her, Jasmine, Tom, and Kevin, arms around each other, exhausted but triumphant. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Dinner tonight? There's something I want to discuss. Claire smiled. Over the past months, their professional relationship had deepened into something more. A genuine friendship built on mutual respect and shared values. Marcus had become a regular visitor at her apartment, charming her mother with stories and ensuring Diane had access to the best medical care. That evening, at a quiet restaurant, Marcus seemed nervous in a way Claire had never seen. I have a proposition, he said. And before you say anything, this is completely separate from work. Okay, Claire said, curious. I'm opening a new property, a boutique hotel in Vermont, focused entirely on the principles we've developed together. Exceptional service through exceptional treatment of staff. I want you to be my partner in this. Not as an employee, but as a co-owner. Claire's breath caught. Marcus, I can't afford... I'm not asking you to invest money. I'm asking you to invest yourself, your vision, your values. We'll split ownership 50-50. Build something from the ground up that proves business success and human decency aren't mutually exclusive. Claire looked at the man across from her, the billionaire who'd dressed as a homeless man, who'd risked his reputation on 4 people nobody else believed in, who'd become one of the most important people in her life. Partners, she said, extending her hand. Marcus took it, but didn't shake. Instead, he held it gently. Partners, he agreed, in business and If you're willing, maybe in life too. Claire felt her heart skip. She saw in his eyes the same thing she'd seen that first day when he was disguised as Mark Williams. Genuine humanity, vulnerability, hope. "I'm willing," she whispered. 2 years later, Claire Morrison Whitfield stood with her husband Marcus at the grand opening of the Cornerstone Inn in Vermont. Her mother, healthy and vibrant thanks to proper medical care, cut the ribbon. Jasmine, now VP of Guest Relations, had helped design every aspect of the guest experience. Tom and Kevin had overseen the construction and systems. But more than that, the Cornerstone had become a training ground for people who'd been overlooked elsewhere. Single mothers, former inmates, people with disabilities, immigrants struggling to find their footing, all found opportunities and dignity within its walls. As Claire watched guests arrive for the opening celebration, she thought about that cold morning when she'd given $10 and a granola bar to a stranger. She'd had no idea that small act of kindness would change her entire life. But perhaps that was the point. Kindness wasn't about expecting rewards. It was about seeing the humanity in others, regardless of their circumstances or what they could offer in return. And sometimes, when you lived by that principle, the universe had a way of rewarding you beyond anything you could have imagined. Marcus slipped his arm around her waist. Happy. Claire leaned into him, watching the sunset paint the Vermont mountains in shades of gold. Happier than I ever thought possible. Me too, Marcus said. Thank you for helping a homeless man one cold morning. Claire laughed. Thank you for being the kind of billionaire who wanted to be helped. As the stars began to appear above the Cornerstone Inn, Claire Morrison Whitfield knew that this was just the beginning. They had proven that businesses could thrive while treating people with dignity. Now they would spend the rest of their lives showing others how. The test had ended long ago. But the real work, the beautiful, meaningful work of building something that mattered, was only just beginning.